Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Blitzkrieg, our own strategic affairs show. Now, there is more bad news coming out of Pakistan after the PIA plane fiasco in Malaysia. There have been references to broadsheet, which we will discuss later, and also a hotel in New York owned by Pakistan, which has been the center of controversy. What exactly is happening in Pakistan? We have Mr. Sushant Sareen with us, needs no introduction. He's a regular feature on Republic Media Network, is a well-known strategic consultant and a defense analyst. Sir, a very warm welcome to our show, sir.
Thanks for having me, Gaurav.
So my first question is, so the PIA plane, they couldn't pay $19 million. Malaysia, which was supposed to be, Biradar Islami Mulk, and also with whom Pakistan said that we will have defense cooperation, we will have economic cooperation, we'll make a TV channel that will fight Islamophobia, we'll have train connectivity, etc., etc. Now it seems that Malaysia has said, no, you cannot fly your plane out of here. The people, the passengers suffered for 2 days, sleeping on cold floors, and nobody, to the best of my knowledge, from the Pakistani embassy in Malaysia, sir, in Kuala Lumpur, came and even asked those people. Also, the broadsheet controversy and Ricodic. Your views, sir, and I would like a slightly detailed answer, sir, on this first question of mine.
Gaurav, in a sense, all these three cases which you have spoken about, I think what they do is they highlight the governance failure in Pakistan. Yes, Imran Khan, is utterly inefficient, utterly inept, utterly incompetent, clueless. All of that is true. But the blame for all that is happening today in Pakistan doesn't rest only on Imran Khan. It rests on the entire administrative and governance machinery, the way this banana republic has been governed. And the bulk of the blame would fall, in my view, on the Pakistan army. Let me explain how. You speak about the PIA plane. The sheer incompetence of the PIA to not pay their debts, to not service, they've taken that plane on lease, to not fulfill their obligations. Who is heading PIA? It's a air marshal from the Air Force. You have these people from the uniformed services who think they own Pakistan, who want to run Pakistan, who want to run everything in Pakistan, but they end up ruining whatever they touch. So, whether it is the broadsheet scandal, you look at the number of generals and their relatives, their sons, son-in-laws, their brother-in-laws who are involved. Just today, I learned that one of the characters in that entire scandal is the brother-in-law of, his brothers are married to the sisters of General Kamar Bajwa. How do you expect any accountability in a system like this? The people who signed the entire broadsheet agreement was a retired Fauji. The man who was in charge of NAB was a Fauji. You name WAPDA and the electricity mess which is there in Pakistan, it is headed by a Fauji. You name the institution which is in ruins, it is headed by a Fauji. But everybody will blame everybody else, but not pin the blame on the people who think the whole country is a parade ground, and they can order people around and everybody will, stand to attention, salute them and deliver. It can happen in the forge where a task is given. That's not the way the civil street works. But if you are going to reduce the whole country into a garrison, then what you will have is what you are seeing before your eyes. So in that sense, it is a sign of the complete and utter failure of governance in Pakistan, and the bulk of the blame for that falls on the uniformed services.
No, absolutely, sir. And we also have, this hotel, the Roosevelt Hotel in New York, and also the Scribe Hotel in Paris. And I'm informed through reliable sources. You're telling me that it's actually happened. I'm very surprised how any government can function in such a manner. Are these hotels, both these hotels in New York and France, have they been attached? What is the latest status of these hotels, sir?
Look, the problem is, you say, how does a government function? The government actually doesn't function. How did this whole controversy come about on these hotels? It started with a judge who went absolutely who was running amok with the judicial system, who suddenly decided that he's going to scrap a contract which had sovereign guarantees, the Ricodic contract as it's called. Now that claim has been going on for a fair bit of time, and the company, this was an Australian and a Chilean, it was a conglomerate, a mining conglomerate, which was awarded an arbitration award in excess of $5 billion. Now, the Pakistanis were told, the Pakistanis appealed, and they were told, okay, fine, you give about 50% of the money you put in a kind of a bank guarantee or in some kind of an account, so that we know that you have the intention to give. These guys just simply sat on that. Finally, the court in a court in the British Virgin Islands, because the PIA is actually registered in the British Virgin Islands. So a court in the British Virgin Islands issued an order freezing both the Scribe Hotel in Paris as well as the Roosevelt Hotel in New York. Incidentally, the Roosevelt Hotel, one of Imran Khan's cronies was trying to get into a deal with the Trump family and trying and selling it to them. So that entire deal making has also gone through the window. But that hotel has right now been attached. It cannot be sold. It has been frozen, and it is going to be liquidated to pay off the debts with part of the $5 billion payment which is owed to this mining conglomerate under the Ricodec contract. So that is where matters stand right now. It hasn't yet happened, but yes, the both the hotels are frozen. The hotel, in any case, very mysteriously, at least the Roosevelt Hotel, had actually put shutters up and said that they were going out of business. They were shutting down the hotel. This happened about a month before this order of freezing came. Something similar happened in the broadsheet case. So within Pakistan, apart from the governance failure, it's the kleptocracy which runs Pakistan, which also causes problems, because the bureaucracy actually undermines their own country along with the Faujis to actually give the claimants their claims and take a cut from it, which is very, very clear from the broadsheet case as well. So that is what is actually happening right now.
You mentioned their generals taking over every facet and every part of their government and trying to run it into the ground, as it were. What occurred to me also was their space program called Suparco, which is run by a general of the electrical and mechanical engineers of the Pakistan Army. And every time ISRO launches a satellite, they say, okay, we also have Suparco. But sir, obviously with their generals at the helm of affairs, they don't have any satellites going up into the air now. My next question to you is, there have been rumors in Pakistan about a possible deal between the army and the PDM, the pro-democracy movement. My question to you is, sir, do you think that the army is getting a little tired of Imran Khan, Niazi? Do you think that is a possibility?
Yeah, look, if the army has to save itself, it needs a fall guy. The only fall guy available to them right now is going to be Imran Khan. So ultimately, they will have to sacrifice Imran if they want to save themselves. And they're already getting a lot of flack for having selected Imran Khan and having installed him as prime minister. Nobody, and Gaurav, part of the problem is that in our part of the world, if somebody speaks English with a good clipped accent, we think he might be efficient and a very competent person. But Imran Khan actually proves a lie to that myth which prevails out here. The guy is utterly brainless. The fellow, you whisper something into his ear in a moment, and the next moment he will try and make a campaign out of it. But the army actually now needs a scapegoat, and the best scapegoat they will get is Imran. The only problem for them is two. One, how do they get rid of Imran Khan without actually upsetting the entire apple cart? So I think that is, doing a very, very direct kind of an intervention. So that is one ticklish problem. But I think they might have found a way around that by resurrecting what is known as the foreign funding case, where Imran Khan, who pretends to be an extremely honest man, but lives in a palatial house on the hill without explaining where the money to run such a house comes from. I live in a 3-bedroom flat, and I, probably earn more money than Imran Khan officially. And yet this guy runs this house. So on that foreign funding scandal, that has suddenly been resurrected after 6 years, and that could be one way of easing him out. But the second problem for the army is that once they ease him out, what do they replace him with? And because the opposition has directly targeted the army chief and the ISI chief, the problem then becomes that will it be the survival of the army chief or the survival of Pakistan. Because Imran Khan and Pakistan, I don't see how they can continue together for any length of time. It works very well for us if he completes his full term and runs Pakistan to the ground. But I don't think that is going to be acceptable. I think 2021 is going to be the year in which Imran Khan will see the back of him. But the problem will remain, how does the army actually strike a deal with PDM, on what terms and conditions, so that they can, live together in relative harmony, have some kind of a modus vivendi worked out, and function by throwing Imran Khan out. That will be the real, thing to watch out for, rather than whether Imran Khan stays on for another 3 months, 6 months, whatever.
Mr. Sareen, I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of crystal gazing here, and I know this is not, an extremely appropriate question here, but Imran Khan and his close team feels there is no alternative to Imran Khan today. That is what they feel, and they're entitled to their thoughts. I'm going to ask you now, who do you think within the PTI, if there is a coup within the PTI, they remove Imran Khan and get somebody else, who do you think is somebody who could replace Imran Khan? Because we have all seen the foreign minister posturing for a very long time. He's strutting around like a peacock, posturing, if you know what I mean, sir.
Yeah, so there, about 6 months back, similar speculation was underway, and the two names which were being mentioned, and the two guys who were strutting around as possible alternatives, one was, of course, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, and the other guy was this fellow Asad Umar. Asad Umar has a good lineage. He is the son of a general, so he kind of fits in very well. Again, an extremely incompetent man, because as a business executive, every company he headed, he actually ran to the ground. So he doesn't have a very stellar record, and even as the finance minister, he made a hash of things. But nevertheless, these were two people whose names are being mentioned. The problem, however, is going to be that Imran Khan is basically a cult, and PTI is in many ways a cult. Half of PTI is full of people whom the army has corralled into the PTI to win the election, who are called the electables. The other half is, people who are part of that Imran Khan cult. Now, if you get rid of Imran Khan, I'm not very sure if the party will survive in one piece, and the cult will go with Imran Khan for whatever that is worth. The electables will, however, switch their loyalties, which means you come back to the same question, that you will then have to have a kind of a khichdi government if you continue with the same parliament, in which you will have to have all sorts of characters becoming part of the government, which is not going to be an easy, thing to manage. There are just too many contradictions in that. So I think that is going to be a bit of a deal breaker. Perhaps a better thing for them to do would be to go in for fresh elections, with an understanding that whoever comes into power next, probably the PMLN, will have a leadership in place which does not, go after the army the way Nawaz Sharif has been doing. So yes, Nawaz Sharif will remain the boss in the PMLN, but he'll have to pipe down, as will the party have.
Sir, I've spoken to a lot of Pakistanis, and they say that the days of military coups in Pakistan are over, and there is no Yahya Khan, Ayub Khan, Ziaul Haq or Pervez Musharraf any longer. And even if the army interferes, it's always, in the shadows. So do you think there is any scope for any direct intervention by the army, seeing what Imran Khan and his government are doing today? The people are absolutely down on their backs on the road, sir. The price of everything is going through the roof. People are despondent. And do you see the 111 brigade coming out in the open? Do you see the old days coming back? Or you think, like most of the Pakistani intellectuals that I speak to, that if the army controls, they're going to try and control from the shadows, and there is going to be nothing up front? There is no Qamar Javed Bajwa coming and saying that I'm going to the presidential palace. That's not going to happen.
So whether it's Qamar Javed Bajwa or somebody else, look, what does it take to do a coup in Pakistan? And I will quote Chaudhry Shujat Hussain, who said 1 jeep and 2 trucks is all it takes, right? Now, this business that there will be no coup. I remember in 1999, I was discussing this with some people in the Indian establishment. And even at that time, everybody said there will never be a coup in Pakistan. I said, how can you ever rule out a coup in Pakistan? They said the world had changed. The world had not changed. just like people say there will never be a war between any two countries anymore. Listen, we are seeing wars happen on a daily basis, right? So I don't believe that there will never be a coup again. I don't. What will the Biden administration, for example, do? Yeah, they'll make a few noises, but at the end of it, there is Afghanistan to worry about. There are their troops to worry about, and the Americans have always loved dealing with dictators and sleeping with them. So I would rule out a direct coup ever. Yes, it is more convenient to run the kind of hybrid system that they're running right now. The army controls everything and ruins everything, as we discussed earlier. And yet, you have the civilian facade, and that works for whatever it works, at the end of the day, I think the possibility when all other options run out, the only option that remains is the military stepping in directly and then trying to put some kind of a civilian facade in one form or another after a few months or maybe a few years. That's Pakistan's history. I don't think that cycle of history is going to take a change anytime soon.
So when Musharraf was in power, he sent Kasuri, his foreign minister, to meet the Israeli foreign minister, and apparently they met in Turkey. Then, the Pakistani press got a whiff of it, and there was hell to pay, at least for Musharraf and Kasuri there. But this entire thing about having diplomatic relations with Israel, not many Pakistanis would like to discuss this so openly, but it is largely driven by GHQ Rawalpindi. It's driven by the Pakistan Army. Now, why this facade that, we stand for the rights of Palestinians? Why this facade in Pakistan that the Jew will never be my brother, he will never be my friend? And yet, behind the scenes, Pakistan wants to have friendly relations with Israel. Why this dichotomy?
No, it's not really a dichotomy. I wouldn't say it's a dichotomy. Number one, I think for them it's a part of the religious belief that you cannot have any kind of friendship with the Yahud or the Hanud. Hanud is people like you and me, and the Yahud is, of course, the Israelis or the Jews. And that's part of the belief system which most Pakistanis profess. That is one part of it. The hypocrisy comes in when they look at Palestine as an Islamic cause. How come Xinjiang is not an Islamic cause, right? Now, the dilemma for the Pakistanis right now is that they have boxed themselves into a corner with their rhetoric. Yes, there is a section in the military establishment, and it's not new, it's been there for years, which has said that, listen, there is no reason why we should not have good relations with Israel. Why should we give a free, an open field to India to play in Israel? And all of that. And why can't we, kiss and make up with Israel and then benefit from whatever we can get through our alliance or our friendship with the Israelis? For example, it is said that the Jewish lobby was very instrumental in India's inroads that India made in the United States, for example. Part of it is real and a lot of it is myth. But nevertheless, the Pakistanis buy it. Now, the thing is that there is that section which wants to benefit from relations with Israel, and there is another much more dogmatic section which does not want to do it. So one, there is that tussle. The second is that you have fed or indoctrinated your people so successfully on this hatred of the Yahud or Hunud. And just yesterday, you had Maulana Fazlur Rahman, taking out a Israel Namanzoor rally in Karachi, a mammoth rally out there. So you have this pressure coming from the Pakistani street as well. And at a time when you're already boxed into a corner because of your incompetence and your maladministration and your malfeasance in government, how do you, justify an outreach or a normalization to Israel? So I think they're caught between two stools and they don't have an easy way out anytime soon. Yes, Imran Khan is famous for making U-turns. So just because Imran Khan says that I will not, make up with Israel, I will never take the man seriously, because tomorrow he will pretend that, he's made a U-turn. Like all great leaders take U-turns, according to him, he'll take a U-turn. So I don't think that's an issue. I also don't think that the mullahs in Pakistan are a big issue, because most of them are in the pay of the Arab states and others. Most of them, their madrasas and their shops run on money which comes from the Gulf. And if the Gulf potentates tell them, to fall in line, these guys will fall in line. So I don't think the pressure is also going to come from there. But I think there is a whole lot of other public opinion, including the liberals in Pakistan, that oxymoron called the Pakistani liberal, who will also come raving and ranting against, a relationship with Israel, as with people who actually have internalized the hatred of the Hindu and the Jew in their minds in Pakistan. And there is, I think that's a vast majority of Pakistanis who will also not look kindly upon making up with Israel. So I think on balance, they've decided to withdraw from that trial balloon which they had floated.
My last question to you, Mr. Sareen, is ever since Joe Biden took over, Pakistan is obviously always looking for messiahs everywhere. So Imran Khan was a messiah who would solve everything, and Musharraf and Ziaul Haq, and they have these periodical fits in which everybody waits for a messiah. Now, Joe Biden is the latest. Do you think there is going to be any fundamental change in the way America looks at Pakistan? There could be a change, here and there a little bit, because the signature of Trump and the signature of Joe Biden is largely different. But the American deep state, or the way America as a country with institutionalized responses to Pakistan will look at it, do you think there is going to be some fundamental deep tectonic shift in the way US looks at Pakistan?
Look, I don't see a fundamental positive shift in the way US looks at Pakistan. But what there will certainly be a shift. Look, let us not forget one thing, Gaurav. Joe Biden was vice president under Obama. The maximum number of drone strikes, for example, happened under the Obama years, right? It wasn't as though the Americans did not know the double games that the Pakistanis were playing. And yet the Democrats, for whatever reason, they did it with the Chinese. They kind of literally lay down and let the Chinese walk over them and reduced America's power to that extent. But in the case of Pakistan also, they kind of tolerated all sorts of nonsense that was coming from the Pakistanis. They would go and hector the Pakistanis, but never really turn the screws on the Pakistanis, something which Donald Trump did not to great effect, but to some effect. Now, whether they will go back to that Donald Trump thing of turning the screws on the Pakistanis, and we have seen that when you start turning the screws real hard, for example, on the FATF, the Pakistanis are forced to give in. But I don't think the Americans are going to go that. I think you will have that same muddled policy of at one level acting tough, at another level giving in to the Pakistanis, and this liberal nonsense which goes on that the Pakistanis are really troubled. Some of it was reflected in the testimony of or the statement by the incoming defense secretary designate. The kind of stuff he said about how they are going to make Pakistani partners in peace in Afghanistan, etc., etc. But at one level, Pakistan's utility is only vis-a-vis what is happening in Afghanistan. At another level, Pakistan's nuisance is also going to be there, because if the Pakistanis embrace of China and giving the Chinese bases in the Arabian Sea, if that is going to be there, and the US-China tussle actually becomes much more fraught than what it is right now, then how does Pakistan fit into that system? So I think on balance, Afghanistan will be a non-entity. The China factor will be more important, and that is where you might start seeing a fundamental shift, even as far as Pakistan is concerned. As far as India is concerned, I think the Americans forever have told us that we have almost 95% convergence with India on the east of India vis-a-vis China. We have only 5% convergence on the west of India. Maybe if the Pakistanis go into the Chinese camp as completely as they are going, maybe that 5% convergence could go up to 50-55%, which would not be a bad thing for us. So I think we'll have to see what exactly are the kind of policies which both the Pakistanis make vis-a-vis China and the Americans make vis-a-vis the AFPAC region, to try and figure out how exactly this cookie will crumble.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Sushant Sareen. It was wonderful talking to you, ladies and gentlemen, with Mr. Sushant Sareen here. We spoke about the PIA plane controversy, the Rego-Dick controversy. We spoke about the broadsheet controversy. Why does the Pakistani army want to actually recognize Israel? We spoke on a host of topics. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll come back to you next week with another special guest. Till then, from my team and I, Jai Hind.